All right. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here. I was just mentioning that it feels like we're movie stars at the production value of events these days. My name's Anand Shah. I'm a partner at the Asia Group. I oversee the India and South Asia practice. I may know some of you or many of you from lots of time working on US and India topics in this town. This panel is called Translating Capital into Opportunity: How US Investment is Powering Inclusive Growth in India. Happy to be joined on stage with the real panelists. I'm just the moderator. Pamela Phan from the US Department of State, Eli Peterson from TransUnion, and Sanjay Kedia from Marsh McLennan in Mumbai. You know, as a receiver in my past life of US capital, I know what it's like to see US capital really drive innovation and risk in India. In a previous life, I ran an electric vehicle company largely funded with American investors. I've watched very closely as two large American companies have helped build financial inclusion in India as part of their UPI movement. And the next steps in that really are going to be a pretty significant unlock that many American companies, including several on this stage, had a lot of value in. I'm going to start, however, today with Pamela, as we talk a lot about the US-India relationship, and the Department of Commerce is central to how business does work in India, and would like to start by asking what the US-India commercial priority are these days.
Sure. Thank you for that, Anand. It's good to see everybody here. Appreciate the ability to have this platform to speak about what we're doing. The Department of Commerce is committed to advancing U.S. commercial relations, and it's really being driven by a view that this is a growing economic partnership. And this growing economic partnership is made possible because India and the U.S. really share a set of common values that are grounded in our democratic traditions. We also share a commitment to promoting free, open, rules-based order across the Indo-Pacific. We at the Department of Commerce are guided by the White House Indo-Pacific strategy. And as part of that, we're looking to strengthen our long-term position in the Indo-Pacific region. And we're also looking to demonstrate that we're committed to the relationships that we have there. This includes deepening important strategic relationships like the one we have with India. We are engaged bilaterally. We are also negotiating alongside India and 12 other partners in the Indo-Pacific region on an Indo-Pacific economic framework for prosperity. Let me say a little bit about our footprint in India, just to give you a sense of our prioritization of that market. At headquarters, I have a team of about 7, but in the field, we have an overseas team of about 70. And that spans 7 different countries, or sorry, 7 different cities all throughout the country, supervised by our senior commercial officer based in Delhi. The secretaries provided remarks at this event, and I think that on the basis of her remarks, you can see the enthusiasm that we have about expanding the US-India commercial relationship. She was able to visit India earlier this year in March, and had a series of engagements with the government, the private sector, university, the media, and she co-chaired, along with her counterpart at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, 2 key engagements: the US-India CEO Forum and the US-India Commercial Dialogue, both of which she and Minister Piyush Goyal co-lead. The CEO Forum is a forum comprised of about 18 US CEOs and 26 Indian CEOs who are working together to provide recommendations to the 2 governments as to how we can advance the commercial relationship. The themes and priorities that the CEO Forum have been focused on are themes identified by the Secretary and the Commerce Minister, and those include supply chain resilience, also enhancing energy security, advancing inclusive digital trade, and facilitating the post-pandemic economic recovery, especially for small businesses. So those are the 4 buckets under which we're really trying to drive progress in the relationship. In March, we came out with a series of outcomes from the commercial dialogue, including on semiconductor industry cooperation, strategic trade controls, as well as a working group on talent, innovation, and inclusive growth. So we are looking at using this as a way to reaffirm the strategic relationship between the two countries, and under those 4 buckets, driving those priorities.
You know, Pam, you've spent a lot of time also at the DFC on innovation and entrepreneurship. There's a big visit coming next week. An incredible relationship seems to be emerging between the Department of Commerce, especially under Secretary Raimondo in India. How do you think about some of the steps that are being taken this week or next or over the course of the next few months, and what that means specifically for the inclusive growth agenda in India, especially as American players?
Sure. Thanks for that question. I should start with a comment about how much equity is equity and inclusion are priorities for this administration. I mean, for us at the Department of Commerce, it's really underpinning everything that we're doing right now as we think about how trade and investment can really benefit everybody in society and not just a small segment of society. So the view is that the economy can't reach its full potential unless we are providing opportunities to many different communities. So at Commerce, we've got a number of initiatives that we're really leveraging to advance equity and inclusion to ensure that growth is inclusive. One of them is called the Global Diversity Export Initiative, or GDEI. It's an initiative that we launched back in 2021 to ensure that export opportunities are really available to a wide array of U.S. businesses. And so we're looking to develop tools, solutions, information, and doing outreach to historically underserved populations to make sure that they're aware of those opportunities too. In March, I launched an initiative that is expressly focused on women, women-owned and led businesses, and the extent to which, coming out of the pandemic, they are able to leverage digital tools and this growing universe of digital trade and e-commerce to grow their business potential. So at the end of May, I was able to do a roundtable specifically for minority and women-owned business leaders to talk about how we are looking at various lines of effort that we have ongoing. This is our host year for APEC, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Framework. And as part of our host year, we've embraced the concepts of interconnectedness, innovation, inclusivity. And so in everything that we do, we're trying to drive home those themes. And in fact, it is the Department of Commerce that will be hosting an SME ministerial and partnering with the Women in the Economy Forum that's scheduled for later in the year in August. Just turning back to India quickly, I mentioned before we have 4 buckets of priorities in our commercial dialogue, and 2 of them have a focus on inclusive growth. One of them is inclusive digital trade, and the other one is that post-pandemic recovery, which we are hoping will benefit all segments of society, including small businesses. So in our work, we're promoting skilling, we're promoting other efforts that bring these advantages, especially to the small businesses that stand to gain.
Excellent. Well, to transition to Eli, TransUnion quietly is probably a very significant player in thinking about inclusion in the markets that it operates in now and in India. We talk a lot about digital inclusion, inclusive digitization. India's in this very unique position now of this incredible digital growth element that many people believe is going to lead to credit growth, which could be a multiplier. Would love to hear about how you think of how TransUnion or credit agencies in general can help contribute to inclusive growth in India.
Sure, happy to. And maybe I can start by framing up a little bit of who we are and what we do. Some of the folks in the room, particularly those from India, may know us more as CIBIL, TU CIBIL, where we are the largest credit bureau in the country and one of the larger consumer finance entities. And when we think about the concept of financial inclusion, I think that that's sort of this nebulous term that people throw around that oftentimes just sounds sort of like do-gooder behavior. I mean, for us, it's one of the core pillars of our actual commercial strategy around the globe. So when we think about our commercial strategy, we want to be the best in the world at identifying consumers, so helping people prevent fraud, provide tailored, customized experiences to people in finance and elsewhere. And we want to be the best in the world at promoting financial inclusion. And what that really means from a commercial perspective, and I think for a credit access and economic growth perspective in India, is helping lenders of all sizes and all types and all offerors of any really financial product find consumers who would be a good match for the opportunities that they have to offer. So when we think about the market around the world, but specifically in India, there are still hundreds of millions of consumers who are either unserved or underserved when it comes to accessing credit. And that does not mean, that does not equate to millions of consumers who are unable to handle financial obligations. It really means hundreds of millions of consumers who are invisible to lenders, right? They don't have a traditional credit file. They don't have a history of paying bank obligations the way other consumers do. And so what we've developed over the past decade plus are our series of tools and solutions to help lenders identify those types of consumers, really drawing on what we call alternative data assets. And we've been pioneers in these concepts of both alternative data and trended data, which are ways of sort of looking outside a traditional credit file to see what metrics or data points exist that would make lenders comfortable lending to folks who have a thin or non-existent credit file. And that's really been a significant opportunity for success and growth, both for us and we believe the broader Indian economy over the past several years. So, not to sort of weigh everybody down with statistics, but just to sort of underscore the point, over the last 5 years, we've brought about 200 million previously unknown, invisible to lender consumers into the Indian economy, right? So you're talking about 199 million new to credit consumers that we've been able to score using a new to credit score that we've developed and sort of bring that cohort of borrowers to the attention of Indian lenders. When we think about the trajectory of that, though, the growth for the future is even more significant. So last year, I believe that we did about 3 million new to credit scores for Indian lenders. So far in Q1 of this year, we did about 1.5 million. So you start to see the trajectory of, talking about 50%, almost 100% increases year over year. And when you dig down into the sort of data, you see that a significant cohort, a significant percentage of that cohort, about a third, are women entrepreneurs benefiting from all sorts of credit access opportunities that heretofore had not been there. Most notably, I think there's 3 areas that I would sort of call out in India. The first is the microfinance space, where we've developed tools that effectively create what we call at TransUnion trade lines from microfinance transactions. So, those of you here in the US, if you were to look at your credit file with us, it's literally billions of lines of code uploaded by all sorts of entities on a month-by-month basis for every obligation that you have. Nothing like that exists really in the Indian market, particularly when you get down to small dollar lending. So what we've done is basically created a repository of microfinance trade lines to allow people who are active in that space to use as proof of their lendability, their prior experience managing microfinance credit. We've done similar things in the agri space, right? So if you think about a rural farmer who maybe doesn't have a traditional credit file, there's still all sorts of information about those potential borrowers that should help them access credit and expand their operations. Those could be things like the irrigation quality of the land, the crop density that they could plant, sort of literal metrics around the yield that's likely to result. Things that are totally far afield from a traditional credit file that we can aggregate, collate, and present to lenders to say, this borrower who you have no insight into is, not just a potential borrower, but a really good credit, right? So it allows banks to feel as though they're not taking on risk when they're lending to credit invisible borrowers, but rather taking on new economic and growth opportunities for their institution itself. Similarly true in the MSME space, right? Where, if you think about the rising Indian middle class, we know that the secret to unlocking that economic growth engine is ensuring that MSMEs are able to access the capital necessary to expand their operations. So, again, we've developed a business finance score specifically targeting MSMEs that allow lenders to sort of, again, tap into a pool of potential borrowers that right now they don't feel like they have access to. So, when you look at the trajectory there, you just see an incredible success story so far over the last 4, 5, 10 years, but also the potential for even much more rapid and accelerated growth. And one of the areas at our company that's also a huge area of focus is research, right? And research into the consumer wallet, into what's going on with consumers. And when we dig into sort of the data that we have about Indian citizens, you just see the sort of demographic data and economic data that indicates, like with other markets that we've seen, an opportunity to bring hundreds of millions more consumers into the financial mainstream in the coming years. So I think that's really where we are.
Super interesting to think about every invisible person you're making visible to a lender as being an opportunity for inclusive growth at some level in India. Off to Sanjay. Marsh has a very large business in India, 12,000 employees, as I understand it, across many different lines. You're finally 100% FDI in the insurance broking business. How do you think about, especially from your vantage point, how do you think about inclusive growth in India and the role that Marsh and Marsh's businesses can play?
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, USIBC, and thanks for highlighting that we did achieve 100% FDI, and want to acknowledge the great work in support by USIBC for us achieving this 100% FDI. As Marsh McLennan, as you said, we are present with 12,000 colleagues, 4 businesses, Marsh and Guy Carpenter on the risk and insurance, Mercer on the human resource consulting, and Oliver Wyman on the strategy. So we touch over 8,000 corporates in India in terms of risk, strategy, and people advice. On the inclusion on the insurance space, I want to highlight one particular example which we recently concluded. This we did through an incubator called Blue Marble. It's an incubator launched globally by Marsh McLennan and leading insurer. The chairman of Blue Marble is currently Alex Machowski, who is also the chairman of our Marsh McLennan, sitting there. So what we achieved through Blue Marble was a very interesting innovation on inclusion. Self-employed women workers. Across India, there are 2.5 million self-employed daily workers. We launched a pilot scheme in Ahmedabad, currently with 21,000 women, where they are protected for their incomes if there's an extreme heat wave. It's a very simple parametric insurance where if there is a heat wave above a particular level and they lose out their income due to that, they get paid in their bank account very quickly. We intend to roll out to entire 2.5 million population next year. So this is just one example of inclusive growth where innovative solutions are brought to the country. Another big area where a big impact has been made is on agriculture insurance. We are proud to share that with the use of our data analytics, modeling, and our ability to arrange reinsurance capital, 20 years back, the first agriculture insurance program at a scale in the country was launched with the help of Guy Carpenter, where we brought our global capability. And we saw this very rapidly growing in India on the agriculture insurance side. Now, last year alone, we placed over 20% of the entire agriculture reinsurance market in India with $500 million of reinsurance capital premiums being supported. So this is another area of example of innovation and support. India has 1.4 billion people, and the government of India has launched the largest inclusive insurance program, be it on the health, life, accident, you name the area, the government of India is the largest sponsor of the biggest insurance inclusive programs in the world. And as Marsh McLennan, I would say that we are present in all these schemes in some respect or the other. Somewhere bringing the data analytics, somewhere bringing the reinsurance capital, and that partnership and support we sometimes do at a state government level, sometimes at the insurance company behind. But we are present in all of them, and we are committed to support these inclusive programs in the area of arranging capital and in the area of data analytics. So very pervasive touch points in all these areas.
I'd love to ask a question around new opportunities, right? How do you think of this moment in India's existence, in this US-India partnership, and the types of things that you're seeing, including government programs, but outside of government programs, as an opportunity for you to bring innovation or Marsh's thought process or Marsh's capabilities from elsewhere in the world across its businesses in furthering an inclusion agenda more so than what you've mentioned so far?
One, all our 4 businesses are experiencing double-digit growth, in fact, touching around 20% growth in all the 4 areas. In terms of our future plans and priorities, we are hugely committed to India, and we are committed to the priorities of our clients and the Indian market. The government schemes I already touched upon is one area where we are committed and will continue to do so. Let me pick up 4 or 5 other broad themes. India is a land of largest population. So anything around population in terms of themes. We cover currently 10 million lives of our clients' employees' health insurance. Post-COVID, we have seen a demand from the corporates to bring inclusive health and wellness beyond just the health insurance. This year, we have a series of programs launched around mental health. We believe mental health inclusion in health insurance program is virtually absent. So this is one big initiative, for example. Look at our Mercer area on skill development, retirement solutions advice. We are bringing some of our global capability. Recently, we gave a research paper on how we can make on the retirement and pension area on certain sectors to the Standing Committee of Parliament on how some of the best practices of universalization of some of these programs can be brought. So whether it's in terms of advice and capability on retirement, pension, Mercer is playing its role. We acquired 5 years back a very unique tech platform on skill and training called Metal, and now it operates under the brand called Mercer Metal. They have a very big presence in India. You name the education institutes, many of them, some of the government initiatives on training, corporate, of course, on skill development assessment, they are very widely present, and that, of course, is also transferring to the rest of the world. So that's another area of big focus. On the insurance space, the Indian government is looking to bring catastrophic insurance pool, which is currently absent in India. We have done these programs in many parts of the world, and we are actively engaged in doing these studies and modeling on this area of catastrophic modeling. Last year, there was a launch, and this year, for example, there's a launch of surety bonds program. So there we are bringing a lot of new products and solutions ideas. 2 years back, the first title insurance programs were launched in India. Again, we were the pioneers in bringing some of the products on this. So I think you name the area of risk which can unlock a potential for a business or an investment or for people, we believe that we have a role to play and we bring the best of solutions on all these spheres across the market.
We have a few minutes left, and I want to just come back to one theme that seems to come across a number of pieces. The ability to give women money in their bank accounts when they've lost something because of climate or heat. The ability to use alternative data sources to create credit scoring from any of these channels, whether it's agriculture or it's MSMEs. The thinking of inclusive digital economies as part of the process. Like, we as America have an incredible digital economy, one leaders in the world in innovating. You know, there's a lot happening in India, a lot of people talk about it. I'd love to just get some comments from any of you on how you think of the role of digitization in India as part of enabling your bets on inclusive growth?
So, I mean, I can go first. I mean, I would say that, you know, from our perspective, everything that we fundamentally look at our businesses, all of them. We've talked a lot about the core credit business, but, you know, even our other businesses as sort of enabling the modern digital economy, right? So how does one side of a transaction have faith that the other side of the transaction is going to live up to their obligations, is who they purport to be? You know, all of those sort of digital transactions, whether they be a lending transaction, whether it be fraud prevention, whether it be sort of working with a lot of the companies in the room to develop an audience that they want to market their products to, you know, all of those are predicated upon our solutions. And I think from our perspective, the bet on India going forward is huge in that area, right? Because you know, starting with bringing people into the financial mainstream is, you know, wonderful and important, but it's you know, step one of sort of helping to transform all aspects of the economy into what we see sort of the modern digital economy looking like in the US or in Europe or elsewhere, where consumers can have instantaneous, tailored experiences based on what they need, not just, you know, access the absolute, you know, necessary amount of credit to meet their sort of day-to-day obligations. And that obviously requires a lot of alignment with policymakers and with the government, and we see a tremendous amount of focus and interest and prioritization in sort of unlocking that digital commerce potential. So I think we're very bullish.
I would like to leave a framework of thinking how we are looking at the market. Let's look at the stats. India is 4% of the global economy, but 40% of the digital payment transaction happened in India last year. So India is having disproportionate market share of the digital payment. So when we look at India, we need to look at not what the world has done, but I think we need to innovate in India for the size of the sheer digital payment economy which exists in India. So what you saw on the Seva program, where the bank account movement, the premium and the claim moves so rapidly, I think India will see probably some of the biggest and the best parametric insurance program across all spheres of society, where small insurances will become viable and are now viable, and the scale of premium collections and claim payments efficiency will be second to none. So I'm far more optimistic on India, that India will create inclusive programs of protection never seen, never heard of anywhere in the world, and the scale India will deliver will be unbeatable. And that is the promise of India.
Very interesting. Well, we're running out of time now, so I'm going to conclude by saying that it seems to me that, you know, enormous amounts of innovation, creative things are happening, creative things are being facilitated in a government-to-government channel on the US-India corridor, specifically at this time where the countries are coming together, exploring capabilities. American capital is playing a really significant role in innovation, reaching the very last mile, the invisible in India as well. Like, I think there's a lot of inclusive opportunity ahead of us, and look forward to seeing how that plays out. Thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.